I'm thrilled really to be here with you guys. I mean, you guys are really part of, established part of the community. Alex, you can shortly introduce yourself, Thyme, and of course, Hinson. Welcome to the Roundtable Talk number 15. And this is the first in-person Roundtable Talk ever. And today we're really kind of, trying to uncover and discuss, how do we really make Cardano economically sustainable? How can we utilize all of these events that we have ongoing, from summits to hackathons to developer meetups, to really come up with useful use cases that really generate real on-chain transactions that would fill those blocks. Because ultimately, that is really what will lead Cardano to becoming more economically sustainable. But first, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves amongst each other. Can we start with you?
Sure. So I look at the camera, I say hi. I say hi to you. My name is Alex Maza. I'm the Sustainability and Innovation Lead at the Cardano Foundation. I think of myself as a Swiss Army knife, but like the red bit. So I'm only as useful as all the other experts and kind of tools that make the thing useful. I focus on enterprise partnerships in sustainability, and then try to look at ways of innovating funding to actually kind of enable this growth, improving catalysts. So yeah, super stoked to be here. It's warm in Berlin. It's nice.
Nice. Good to have you, by the way.
Yeah. My name is Thyme on the timeline on Twitter. That's my alias, but I run a studio. I'm a product designer, and I have been specifically in Cardano since 2020. However, I would say I'm very omni-chain. I like to explore and see what other companies are doing. And essentially my whole mission in freelancing in crypto is to help make usable products, to help users enjoy the actual front-end aspect to the blockchain and what it can really provide for the world. And I think crypto is really worldwide and really uniting. So I just think, why not help out this mission? So that's kind of the journey I've been on.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Hinson. I'm the co-founder of Cdan Lab and Delta DeFi. So I do mostly three things in our team. So first is the product itself, Delta DeFi, which is I come from traditional finance background. I try to build something that's for those people. And right now the direction is high frequency trading, that's one. And in Cdan Lab, I think we do two things mostly. The first of all is open source maintenance and libraries. Like we have a few alcoholic open source library like Whiskey, Focus, those for Aiken, Rust transaction building. And then it's actually supporting a more well-known name in the Cardano ecosystem is Mesh.js. We are also the core maintainer of it. A lot of the utility of Whiskey is actually exporting to Mesh to consume. So there's the open sourcing part. And the third thing we do is the community. We host a Cardano Hong Kong community and do a bunch of different community events. So for example, the latest Builder Fest in Vietnam, we are one of the co-hosts of these things. So right now, since we're into the interesting time in Cardano, we also try to take a little bit of responsibility. We have been SPO for a long time, also DWeb. Yeah, luckily we have the delegation from CF also, and we are also now running for a CC to try to defend the constitution a little bit, yeah.
Why is, let's say, economic sustainability of the Cardano chain a critical topic to be discussed right now?
That's the value proposition of every blockchain, right? To be a secure distributed ledger. And if Cardano cannot ensure that it is viable to keep the network secure by its validators, by default, it fails. And this is something that we look at from the Cardano lens as a sustainability aspect. Many other chains just look at this as accelerating towards product market fit and adoption with just the end goal of it being adopted and not it continuing to thrive in a sustainable manner. And so there's a lot of kind of hype chasing we see going around, whether it's NFTs, then meme coins, and whatever we have as like prefix and phi. Cardano doesn't really follow trends. That said, we do think about things differently. We think about things long term. At the same time, we need to balance that with the fact that L1s in particular are really becoming much more aggressive in their pursuit for developers, marketers, builders, use cases, and just general traction. So there's a lot for us to do right now or later.
I'm curious to hear your perspective as well. Like, why do you believe this is a critical topic for Cardano, for the ecosystem?
I think timeline-wise, there's no dispute. We just have the final hard fork of Cardano, official planned hard fork. It's like treasury is open up already. Like a lot of the chaos, as everyone of us know, is that everyone applying for treasury budget for a lot of different things. So we kind of earlier adopters or people in the community, we kind of try to be think what's good for our community in general. Like, should we spending more to expand, or should we spend less, more defensively to let's see what's happened? Right now, since the stake is here, it's kind of it's actually upon all of our ADA holders. So it's actually for ourselves, for example, we're feeling a part of it. Like, we're actually part of the treasury. Like, how should we actually see we should use these things? So it's kind of critical. Like, before the hard fork, we don't have the choice, like because it's locked by the Genesis key. But when it's really up to us. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for that, by the way. I'm curious to hear your perspective of this as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess from more of a simple level, if the ship sinks, then everything we've built so far, where does it go? What happens to the people? So I think for obvious reasons, sustainability for the current systems is important, and also to, acknowledge what can be fixed or what can really be worked on to, maybe this ship turns into a rocket and we're going to Mars in that sense. So I just think, yeah, in that perspective, of course, we all want it to work. We want it to, continue long term. We all throw around these words of we are early, and we still, in a way, are, absolutely. I would say the common individual does not understand blockchain technology whatsoever. They hear crypto, they might be interested, they think it's new and it is emerging tech. So yeah, we just have to keep the steam rolling, I would say.
Can I kind of jump in on some of this stuff? Like, I think one thing that you both said is like there's an aspect of the early Cardano adopters, right? And just being early in general from the space. Like, it has matured, regulation has matured, but there's this thing of like the Cardano community versus the rest. And what I think was really cool about Berlin Blockchain Week for me was like all the different ecosystems. You mentioned you're looking at things omnichain, like right now we have, I think, something related to Filecoin next door. There's Solana downstairs. There was a bunch of like ETH upstairs.
I literally passed Vitalik in the stairwell. Yeah,
He was here.
So
yesterday, yes.
So this whole week for me has been about really learning around what other ecosystems are doing when it relates to funding mechanisms. What have they learned? What's worked? What hasn't? What's easily implementable in Cardano? What's some stuff that are major red flags that we could take a look at? And for me, Cardano's bootstrapped its network security and decentralization in one of the best ways possible. We've bootstrapped a really passionate developer community, a really knowledgeable one as well. We've bootstrapped some core businesses that understand how to build dApps on UTXO. I think part of making Cardano sustainable is community growth and actually being welcoming and learning from externals. What have they done? What can we learn? What can we plug in? And instead of just trying to reinvent the wheel, especially when it comes to governance, like I was at Funding the Commons at the beginning of the week, there are problems in our ecosystem which people have identified, we've not yet plugged, and there's actually solutions out there, whether it's funding open source repos, different sources of kind of incentivized builder funding. They're there, and they're actually quite willing to work with Cardano because they see the opportunity of collaboration with our ecosystem through their service or solution. So for me, that's the interesting thing.
Yeah, I just, maybe I could clarify a bit for the sentence that I said. What's the assumption behind? Is that for maybe early Cardano adopter, what's the meaning of it? So when you actually care about these things, since we're now early days in the chaos, it's better to have someone who actually care about the ecosystem in general, but rather than not just care about the applications, to try to shape the early kind of culture or direction. So that's what's the assumption I have when I'm saying that. But generally, I'm 100% agree with what you say. Like, for example, it's not secret. For example, Sedan Lab, we also have a little bit of Polkadot footprint. I'm also think that we should learn about something from the other ecosystem, because so far we are so disconnected. We're not sure what others people is doing. So for us, we are not trying to hide that we have Polkadot participation, because we do that, we kind of have shaped another opinion about how is the better way to do governance, what's better to do, what's better not to do. We have some sort of gut feeling about this, kind of bringing back to Cardano.
So you share basically the same sentiment as Time in terms of, hey, not only be remaining within the Cardano bubble, to put it this way, but also like looking at all this ecosystem. I see you're
bringing them in. Come into the Cardano, make the bubble bigger. It's a big, nice bubble. It's nice and cozy. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to do this kind of whole grandiose posturing of, oh, the chains are interoperable. Because the reality is, L1s generally right now are getting ultra competitive, right? And they are less interested in collaborating, right? But community members themselves, builders that might have just a solution that's trying to find product market fit across different chains or whatever, or might be curious about, hey, like this Bitcoin DeFi thing, like I heard they got some pretty good, UTXO devs over there because they've got UTXO and they can make UTXO speak to UTXO. And I think it's about creating an economic opportunity for Cardano builders, but in collaboration with others that have these solutions that are ready to go. They just need to be integrated instead of built from the ground up and just kind of rebuilding the wheel. And there's many instances of us having rebuilt the wheel, whether it is when we build very different, very similar type kind of based tech stacks for DEXs, for example, with a very small tweak or whatever, and we spend money across all of these different ones instead of saying as an ecosystem, hey, like, let's just have this one library, let's just have this one way of doing things, open source that, and then start building the actual differentiating factor on top of that and pursue market fit, not just solution fit. Yeah. What are people willing to pay for? And if we can see others in other ecosystems that they have something that others are willing to pay for, it's integrated.
I know, Thiem, you represent basically a very important part of the ecosystem. Those are the people that, organize events and such as summits, for example.
More of like perhaps the social layer.
The social layer. But this is also that social layer where that is important, basically, also for bringing in those people to the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think every blockchain has their own bubble, and you have to find others that are also willing to explore and just also connect with other people. Mm-hmm. Because it's one thing to go and participate in another chain, but if they are, say, too reserved or closed off, or maybe focused on their own development for the current chain they're on, then in a way it can be, oh, are we actually exhausting our resources? You want to find people that are actually, willing to collaborate, willing to participate in other platforms despite what it's built on. And I think part of it in the future, at least my vision for crypto, how I understand how it'll unfold, is there will be all of these products and no one's going to understand or know or see how they're built. When we currently use credit cards, when we currently use our current phones, we don't know what operating system half the time, maybe, if we're not technically advanced to really be curious about it. We don't know, we don't care. We just know it works. We think it's flashy, we think it's fun, and we use it. And I know that, other chains, they have, meme coins. There's these degenerates, and we all like to maybe make fun of them or just look at them in a way of like, well, you're not using the chain how the chain's supposed to be used. But what do they have? They have liquidity, they have users, they have attention. And in this society, unfortunately, you have to be online, you have to be very present, because when you have attention, you have money these days. And so that is also part of the conversation of, we want more blocks to be filled. Well, how do we create more attention? How do we involve more people to make those transactions?
Exactly. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, because I want to pick up on what you just said about the attention aspect, and also the people that are curious and willing to go and kind of explore things. Because that does take a lot from a person to be like, okay, I'm probably about to step into a room where people are going to hate on me just because of the blockchain that I'm working on, right? And so I think increasing the opportunity space to have these people meet Cardano people is super important. So like this, so for example, the Cardano Hackathon that's going on upstairs, it's in the same building during the same time as you have Ethereum people, Solana people, a whole bunch of others. They pop through and some are actually participating, trying to figure out, how do I hack something together on Cardano? And I think one thing that we've been lacking as an ecosystem, as opposed to maybe some of the other large L1s out there, is this really vibrant, strategically placed and like regular kind of meetup setup. So not only just serious events, hackathons, just drinks, breakfast, whatever it might be.
Creating networking opportunities.
Just opportunities for people to connect, right?
Yeah.
In different ways, on different things, some serious, some less. We've been quite focused on, like, let's say, Cardano community events, and then maybe some more, let's say, enterprise-focused stuff. But I think there's a whole palette of stuff. Like Polkadot did a rave at a Späti. Späti is like a corner store in Berlin, where they actually, like, there's a whole culture of like sitting outside and having a drink. It's a Berlin thing, right? And that made that special because they were able to give people that were traveling in something of a local experience, but with some Web3 stuff. And you probably don't even talk about any panels. You just have a bunch of people meeting each other. Hackathon's different, but yeah, we need to have more of these as an ecosystem and more coordinated.
I think that's a pain point that you just, tipped something there that, and we will move on to the next segment in just in a bit. But you mentioned enterprises. I've heard you mention also other ecosystems. You also part of other ecosystems as well. What I'm missing really is, because when it comes to the Cardano-centric events, we're really within the bubble. But shouldn't we, and I'm going to look to you really, Thiem, because that's really your specialty, shouldn't we expand that beyond just the Cardano bubble and engage with the Polkadots, engage with the Solanas, engage with the other ecosystems? And if we have, let's say, enterprises there, why don't we all try to bring them together? Because, as you said, we should onboard also others from other ecosystems, those devs here. But how are we going to get them if we don't invite them and show them what we have?
Or also participate
in their events as well.
Correct, yes. And I think it is important, absolutely, to have Cardano-centric events as, maybe that hub for that final piece of bringing everyone together. We should definitely continue that, but also participating in other systems and events and things like that. And like your point to just having maybe non-crypto themed events, in the sense of, what is everyone's hobbies? How do we help grow individuals as people? Because through that community connection of just being genuine and shared interests, through that, you can create friendships, and through friendships, you can build some cool things. And I think I approach other ecosystems in the sense of, okay, I provide a service, and my service is UI, and I want to help your app look better. And everyone wants that, regardless of what chain you're on. And I don't have to necessarily declare, like, I am a Cardano developer, or I am a Cardano...
How could you? No.
I just come in with, hey, I have a service and I can help you. And, after the process, oh, I'm very curious, like, how did you get started in crypto? Yeah. Oh, I actually got started on Cardano, and I still participate heavily in Cardano, and that's my home chain. And then through there, they realize like, wow, they're building other cool things.
Exactly.
There's all these other products that are available.
And try to expand that more on a technical level. So now that's you, maybe less technical, but what if you have, let's say, others who are really, say, native to Cardano, attending these events, speaking to other developers who probably may have this perception that, oh yeah, but this is not available on Cardano, that's not available on Cardano. But then they speak to someone who actually has that depth of knowledge and to correct, this misconception that exists. And then just by those conversations could potentially onboard them. I mean, I'm looking at you, Alex.
So builders need resources, right? They need technical resources. They need some level of financial resources to bootstrap stuff. So like, I'll give you an example of what happened upstairs. Yesterday, there were a bunch of like Solana devs. I was like, hey, like you Cardano Foundation guy, you spoke. So tell me everything technical that I ought to know about Cardano. And I'm like, I give the basics. We have smart contracts.
Yes.
UTXO is pretty secure. And then what I'll do is I'll like pull somebody like Hinson in and be like, hey, meet Hinson. And he does the rest, right? Like, and this is the thing. And that's why like maybe some of the events you did in Hong Kong, like I'm curious to know like what happens when you speak to a Polkadot dev, right? Because they have a specific SDK.
Yeah. Before that, I have a slightly different opinion about Cardano-centric events. Like for example, when we do the Cardano Hong Kong, it's essentially in the entire Hong Kong except our team, there's no other people building on Cardano. So what's happened is like for the Cardano-centric events we host in Hong Kong, it's like a mix of us and other people. Just the theme making us is to be Cardano is the elephant in the room. Like no one could be ignoring it in that kind of setting, but there are Solana dev, there's Ethereum dev. That's how we kind of exchange thought. And then people would also try to be polite to Cardano a little bit more in that kind of events. So this is how things are happening. And I don't really see like it's actually a bubble. So for example, even for Summit, Cardano Summit main stage, I could still say that it's like at least half of the participant is not Cardano native. It's just happened to be Cardano to be the elephant in the room that everyone kind of slightly talk about. But after that, it's just talking about like time. Oh, I have a studio and I would do this. How about collaborating? So I think, in general, it's like it's inherently good to have more these kind of Cardano-centric events because, in my opinion, it's not that bubbles. Yeah. Second is going back to your Polkadot thing. I think in general, it's like when you try to talk to other people's, it's kind of difficult to get into the depth that we want to imagine. For example, comparing SDKs and everything. Like it's more of starting with a fact check. Polkadot is like open governance. We are kind of very easily jump into that topic, talk about whether blockchain money should amplify the voting power, these kind of topics. Talking to Bitcoin people is kind of jumping into technicality a little bit, like UTXO, everything. Yeah. So it's like most of the time it's like just starting off with a fight check. Me and that particular person just specifically is having the same fight. Yeah.
And you can also, through those conversations, I'm sure you're able to kind of understand what is going on technically on other chains and circling back to how do we fill blocks and looking at other chains and what they're doing. For example, Ethereum, they have this concept called POAPs, Proof of Attendance Protocols, and it used to be used very regularly. And I think there's might be some versions on Cardano that kind of emulate it. But essentially, I will be like hosting a Twitter space. And at the end of the Twitter space, I can give my audience a code and they can go and redeem an NFT. And through, say, this Twitter space, there's 150 people, maybe 50 people redeem this code. And then just having that weekly is naturally kind of just building community, but also creating transactions. On Solana, there's this concept called 404s. So this is like kind of merging, I would say, tokens and NFTs, because you can basically tokenize an NFT, fractionalize it. So we all know NFTs can be very expensive. And how do you get other people that may not have that type of capital to participate in that type of project? Well, when you fractionalize, say, a Bored Ape, you can then participate on a very micro level. And you can still hold maybe, say, like 5% of one NFT, and then still have access to that community and access all of those events and all those exclusive, just products that project might be putting out. And it becomes this thing where once you might have a fraction of it, but you can build up to the amount of a full NFT and exchange it. And now we're having like all these other types of transactions. So it's very interesting.
But these type of innovations we don't have yet on Cardano, I guess. But we haven't seen them yet.
Emulating in different ways. I would
Yeah,
say.
and I think the thing is, back to the point that I was trying to make about strategic kind of comms and events, is this 404 is set within a broader kind of growth hacking framework around super teams and what they're meant to be doing, how they do it, all this kind of stuff. So it's about having different bits of a branding and awareness system that then kind of actually connects and makes sense, right? Because what's the point of having a 404 if you actually don't really have a series of events to go to? It's just going to be this one-off thing. So yeah, why would you connect to, why hasn't Cardano integrated to POAP? We would have been part of this broader kind of ecosystem of events that are doing crypto stuff. To EVM, yeah. There's some interrupt stuff as well. Yeah.
Hey guys, I just like to end this segment because and bring it back, of course, indeed to like, hey, making the chain economically sustainable, and but going more into the technicalities. For this, we have Marcus Goof. We're gonna pose a question to him, but get a bit more insights into like really what this, how can we really do this? So, Marcus, can we bring Marcus in? So, okay, so everyone, we're now joined with Marcus. So Marcus, can you just briefly introduce yourself?
Well, Marcus, I work for the Cardano Foundation, but I'm involved in many different topics as a stake pool operator myself, then in different committees, technical steering committee, the parameter committee. And so if you want to ask me something, I will bring in a perspective from a, let's say, economical oversight view and how we can change parameters or support or what we can do on the infrastructure side of the network to support the upper layers, the use cases, the applications, the enterprises, all the things that generate fees, because my topic is mostly on economic sustainability. So not just fill the blocks, but actually how can we earn the fees in order to end up really economically sustainable.
Well, what a coincidence, because that is exactly the topic that we're discussing here today. I mean, we just heard from the other guests, like, hey, what they believe what is required to really make Cardano economically sustainable. But I'd like to get your perspective on that issue. Can you just...
Well, yeah, my expertise is not on the use cases and on the adoption layers. It's a huge effort to find use cases and implement them, find the users. That's one thing. On the lower layers, so the infrastructure side, we need to figure out how to best support it. Let me make a very quick example. In order to earn the fees, we need more transactions. So it's easier to make more transactions if we lower the fees. So having more transaction by lowering the fees, but this then in the net sum, bottom line, will not make us economically sustainable. Another topic is, yes, hopefully we have more transactions, more adoption, but how many fees can we collect by having transactions in the block? In order to understand in which relations, so the dimensions what we talk about in between running the network, parameterizing it, improving it, tuning it, but then doing governance on top of it and trying to talk and find reasonable net change limits is something that I found very interesting right now. A challenge not for the network, but for us humans, I see it is that these are very high 9-figure numbers. And we are not really used to deal with this long series of zeros numbers. And my approach, or what I will suggest, let's try to break it down into smaller pieces. So a quick example will be if we talk about a net change limit of 300 million ADA and don't see it like, oh, it comes from the reserves in, so a net change limit, we will not spend more than we get from the reserves. Getting from the reserves doesn't mean we earn it. So if we wanted to earn it from fees by keeping a 300 million ADA net change limit, this would mean that in each block, each single block created every 20 seconds, we will need to earn around 170 up to 200 ADA. And right now we earn between 2 and 4 ADA. So just to give you a relation, so this may be the relation between 2 to 4 ADA that we currently earn, we will need to increase it to 170 to 200 ADA in order to be able to say we are economically sustainable. Only on the net change part, so what we spend on the governance side. There is another part we spend on the staking rewards and on the stakeable operator fees. That is on top of it, so actually it will be like 300 to 400 ADA per block that we will need to earn. So I'm not saying that we should spend less, so like 300 million is way too much and we should only spend 30 million. But when we spend it as an investment, then we really need to ensure oversight and really figure out how we can create the value in increase of capacity, in marketing, in promotion, supporting the adoption and the upper layers, so the actual usage. But it needs to be created as a counter value. And this is where I say the governance process really needs to understand that just spending it's really not easy money and not money.
Exactly, yeah.
So sorry for the long...
No, that's perfect, absolutely. Instant, I see you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the equation, I also do some quick math before this. The equation is that in order for us to have a net zero, it's kind of very, very difficult to fit in the equation. Like you have to be, for example, market say 100 something ADA in one block generated in order to reach that. So in my opinion, it's another kind of more tricky, some people might not like this, or some people talk about it a lot, is how to actually, for what we spend, is actually good for the economy in the sense of ADA price. Like when ADA price increase, like we don't really have to like 100 million to do the same thing. Like we maybe just need 220 millions of ADA, we could do the equivalent things, like considering all the labor costs and everything. So there's another missing part of the puzzle that I have no idea about it, frankly, yeah.
So more users, would you say it kind of would boil down to, would like, hypothetically, if there's an influx of users, influx of price of ADA, that would in essence solve that problem?
Solve it. It is definitely a very big positive factor if it happens, if we manage to make it happen. On the other side, it could also go wrong. If we spend the money without creating value, without adding users, then we have spent money. It has some more or less impact on a price sell pressure. And it could also go the other way around, so that we have to spend more ADA in a ADA fiat exchange rate in order to do the same things. And if that happens, then we spend more ADA to do the same things, which is increasing sell pressure. So even if the impact is not like very strong, but a small percentage, but if we do that for a couple of years, then this is an increasing thing. So like a negative down spiral. And this is what we need to recognize from the beginning. Again, so the real result is so not like filling blocks, but earning fees. And it's also not spending money, but get adoption. That's the thing, that what really counts.
From my point of view, or our point of view, we will see every single treasury unlock as an investment decision, like for the community point of view. It's not just we have to do this, so we unlock this amount of money because we just want to do it, but essentially kind of have to be some sort of high level, though might not be very deductively sound on how it will bring the ROI, but at least I think it's like for the proposer's responsibility to state a little bit how it could help to generate the value to the community as a whole. Our DREP voting is also seeing some of these things in different proposals. Yeah.
It's on an epoch basis, and yeah, I try to keep it very simple. Actually, we work on the foundation also on some insight pages to make these numbers visible and comprehensible, because the 400 ADA is a point in time, because as we consume the reserves, this is a decreasing curve, and it will be less reserves that will be distributed on the other side. So the good thing is that in the past, in the history of the chain, so in the last 4 to 5 years, we have already spent significantly less than theoretically would have been possible. So the Aurorus protocol is distributing reserves based on the chain behavior, on all of our behavior. The more stake participation we would have, the more blocks actually are produced by stake pool operators, the more reserves are distributed as rewards to all the participants. If the pledge is increased, it would even mean more reserves for all of us. But as this never is a 100% ideal situation, some blocks are missed, not every ADA is staked or delegated. We have consumed significantly less ADA. Let's give a rough number, 30% less than ideally would have been possible. This means we still have much more ADA in the reserves than it could be now. That's a good thing, because it means after 4 years now, we still have a lot or big bunch of, so we talk about billions of ADA that we still have to spend. The thing is, we really need now to figure out how to make this adoption layers, because in the past it was much more focused about building the network, the infrastructure below. In the past years, the main topic was stake pool operators and reward schemes. Personally, even if I'm stake pool operator myself, my opinion is that thing is implemented and was deployed and has built up as a quite good, diverse and decentralized ecosystem. It's still important to keep an eye on it, how it works, and may find some little things to improve. But now it's much more important to watch, and also on the foundation, on the Cardano Foundation, is now focusing on the upper layers. So adoption, enterprises, use cases. The underlying layer really is stable and good to build blocks, to bake that transaction into the blocks, which is the requirement for all the use cases. That's fine. Now we need to look at the upper layers.
Okay, so I agree with you there. The thing is, we speak about use cases. That's the word that you just dropped, right? And earlier, I know that you've mentioned also that we need more users, right? Okay, so we have all of these events, happening globally on a yearly basis, from ecosystem to like multi-ecosystem blended events. How can we really ensure that we are being more effective in terms of utilizing those type of events to come up with ideas, useful use cases?
Yeah.
Because I can just, write a proposal as you just said.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, amazing idea. But what are we doing? Are we just creating solutions for the sake of creating solutions? Or are we trying to meet a demand, trying to solve a problem?
I can take this one.
Please, yes.
So from the product designer's perspective and a product perspective, with UI comes UX, and UX is user experience. And what UX individuals solely focus on is research. And what I have found across all chains, regardless of Cardano, is there is a lack of research of users. At events, we need to be collecting data, and data is very powerful. I think a lot of builders are very passionate, and they're very, they have so many ideas, and they truly are trying to make everything better for the ecosystem, and that's great. But the thing is there's a lack of clear direction, what the actual consumer, and there's this dissonance when it comes to that. And this is something that I would say Web 2, we can call it, really focuses on. They're very aggressive with just newsletters, collecting data. When you go to a website, the first thing that pops up is a call to action, and it's collecting user information, it's collecting phone numbers, it's collecting just what they want to know what you are doing in your free time, because from there, the design reflects this. The design like entices them, and in a way it's influencing and really getting into the psychology of people's behaviors. And why is Nike so successful? Because they're influencing this lifestyle of you can do it. You can also become that athlete that we are always presenting on this billboard. And so I think through these events, we can understand what do people like, what do people enjoy, and how do we create products that really reflect that. For example, just this morning, these pancakes, they're delicious, they're enticing, and everyone is taking photos and creating content. And I think it becomes something as simple as this. And with having tons of builders in the room, everyone gets very technical, and that's a beautiful thing. It really is. But on the flip side, if we are trying to work on the top of funnel, if we are wanting to target users, we need more data.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree with you, though I'm also technical, but I could say that so far my experience or observation with Cardano is we're a little bit too obsessed with the technology that we have. Like a lot of people are just try to build something out of a technology, but it's not try to solve it from the user's point of view. So I think so far we have a culture of the core text is much more exciting than the adoption. Though we kind of, if we on the Twitter space, it's like we still say quite a lot of adoption words in line between. But if time probably can fail it, as there's actually very little people care about what adoption actually means. But whenever we say about layers, there are a lot of people just rushing out, and then, yeah, layers can increase transaction whatsoever. So I certainly agree with what you say, and I could maybe also add a little bit on top of it. As a funny thing is, for example, for ourselves, we consider ourselves super focused on a team that's super focusing on use case, and we have a little bit of a take throughout these few years when we are building the stuff. So user-facing perspective is what Time has mentioned. It's like UX and user study. This super underrated. Is that there are a lot of, for example, we are building a desk, but we could still say that a lot of desks Cardano right now is still neglecting too many of the actual users' needs. So this is one of the perspective, but I have two more that kind of different angles under the hood. Is another thing is as a technical person in Cardano, I feel like whenever I want to develop something in Cardano, the cost is just an order of magnitude higher than what I have to do on Ethereum, etc. So there's more of the dev enabling that kind of thing. It's nothing to do about the core tech. Like no matter what's a PP, what's a layer, doesn't really matter. And so far, this is also why we kind of contribute quite a lot in the open source tooling, that kind of perspective, because when we try to build a thing, it's that there's just too many lacking. Like if I'm in dev, I have to invest tons of time to figure out all the stuff, and that's kind of annoying. And we look at the funding distribution so far, we are super also under-invested in the dev tools. Those are not the rocket science, but those are just the dev day-to-day, how to carry the blockchain, how to build a transaction. These are super under-maintained and supported. Like I could still claim that maybe it's kind of a little bit continuation of yesterday roundtable, is that there's, so far I feel like there's no one single SDK is complete on Cardano. Big claim for me. Yeah, so this is a second perspective. It's nothing about core tech, nothing about super rocket science stuff, but just the developer experience on how to bring the idea to life. The third thing I'm actually super having an opinion on is about the scaling technology. It's about, for example, Hydra, Mika, those are the things that are emerging from Cardano. These things are very important. Why? Because with current protocol parameter, it's kind of difficult for us to tune to a way that could suit all of the dApps or use cases. However, if we have the, for example, the layer 2 scaling solution, it's just the cost of running different dApps are just narrowed by quite a lot. It exposes quite a lot of opportunity sets. For example, something that's require very high throughputs. Maybe people, let's say education credential, I just make up an example. People might update it very frequently after taking one lesson, second lesson, third lesson. it might not make any economic sense to just update everything on this layer 1 blockchain. However, for those things, when we have the opportunity to just turn the curve of cost a little bit different or lower, it opens up much more other possibility to actually build on a blockchain. Yeah, that's what I take so far. But it's kind of super complicated question. It's like different factors that multiply by each other's. We kind of, yeah, different people taking on different stuff accordingly, yeah.
There are multiple things that you just mentioned here, I must say. I mean, you said, you know, like, for example, with developers, it's more expensive for developers to start developing Cardano compared to elsewhere. You also said that tooling, you know, certain toolings are just not properly maintained. Yeah. And but on the other side, I'm going to look on this side. I mean, you made a really excellent point. You said that UX, UI. You said, and you also made that same point. Cardano is we are sitting on so many data, you know, but yet we are not utilizing the data that we have to really try to figure out what are their needs, what are their demands, so that we can build solutions.
I don't even know if we have that data.
So I'm gonna actually look, because you love data. You're
the thing is, when she mentioned it, I already started
thinking the same. Like, hey, this is market stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Half a year ahead of a summit potentially. So if the treasury withdrawal goes right, and I have an idea. We need to talk because there's. I imagine that there's an idea.
I mean, yeah, I know we have to wrap it up in a bit, but just bringing it back to the original question in terms of why is really this topic of economic sustainability such a critical issue, you know, right now for the Cardano ecosystem. I think we've heard a lot of stuff, even with Alex, when Alex was here. I think, what would you say that is at this point required, like, to really meet that, to make Cardano economically sustainable?
It's first, like what Hinson said, that there's multiple things that factor up. Then it's also on different layers. So like on the infrastructure layer, on the parameter layer, and the core development things, like scaling to actually allow more transactions is one thing. But it's on different layers. And I don't consider myself knowing on all the layers, especially not the upper layers, what is the best or the right thing. Time will tell. The important thing is that we really try in a diverse and decentralized governance setup where we are now with D-reps, but also delegators who believe and trust in D-reps or lose some trust and delegate to someone else, that we really ensure or support that these people understand what this actually means. Because there is some risk, because the treasury money is not mine, is not yours. So it's easy to spend it. So as from the perspective as it is not my money. So it's easier to say yes to something. Exactly. And then, yes, we need to spend it in, like what you said before, see it as an investment. The investment must be seen as not I give someone the money, but I demand someone to create a counter value for this money. And this is the very most important thing on whatever layer and factor that we can turn some little things.
I was going to say, and are there any specific like KPIs on ROI that have been established when you are giving this amount of money? And I think having the broad expectations of, yes, I'll give you, say, 1 million, and in return, is there any concrete like metrics that you're trying to measure or actually understand what percent of, say, percent of the projects that you do, or these projects that do receive money, how far have they taken it? How many, say, wallets have they created? I know that is definitely one metric that is feasible because of the blockchain. But for example, those types of
the thing here is you asked if we are doing it. So I assume you ask we at the foundation. Yes, we do some assessments, but we are not deciding. So we now have a decentralized setup of decision making. Actually, it will be a demand that everyone, or at least a solid majority of voting power, does this. They have different perspectives, different priorities or strategies, and maybe also relations or partnerships, which is just a fact. We cannot avoid it, that everyone is completely independent and objective on these things. The how to assess it is difficult because, or how to KPI, to define KPIs, because it's then also a little bit
It's broad.
how you count it, what was the real value. Is it like users have shown up, or actually daily users, constant users, so these kind of things. One thing that I personally would prefer, and I know this is a bold opinion from someone like me who has the honor to work for the foundation, and there, I mean, I don't need to build a project that is self-sustainable, but I will prefer to see some skin in the game. So like if there is a 1 million investment or a project that demands 1 million, then we shouldn't give them 1 million, but something like 700,000, and 300,000 needs to come from the project owner itself. Some skin in the game. That gives me the trust that he really believes in his project.
Yeah.
And this is, in my opinion, one of the strongest pre-filters and selections. So you don't end up with 1,000 proposals, with maybe just 50, and that makes it much easier for the participating voting entities to analyze them, assess them. From 50, you choose the best 20, and that will be my proposal. But I understand in the blockchain industry and with young startups,
This is a totally different perspective that you've just brought to the table. You do realize that, right? Because I mean, I've never heard anyone in the ecosystem actually considered such approach.
Game approach.
It was.
In general, skin in the game approach. Yeah.
Exactly. Amazing. Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah. I mark it down. After it.
Same question for you guys. What is required? What do we need to do?
That's the $1 million question.
Well, you're $1 million baby, so I could say, yeah, go for it.
Maybe I give it a bit more time to think about. I have my answers. Yeah. Because for the formulas that we have just discussed, I think I have 4 distinct points to each part of the formulas. So first of all, although myself also not really that like to talk about price, but the price is the elephant in the room, kind of. We kind of, from the formula itself, it suggests that we have a few years time to figure out how we can spend the treasury to invest in order to sustain or support the true ADA price increase. It's not coming from the pumping, but it's actually more people coming so that there's more holders that's like believing in ADA, so its price is rising. So that let's say 4 or 5 years later, we don't need to spend the same amount of ADA amount out of our treasury, and the curve could be becoming more, start to be flat and more even a little bit upward. So this is the first thing. It's like from every treasury unlock, it's like seeing from the investment perspective of how much it do good for the communities. There's a top of everything, I think. And then going back to the higher level, which is the 3 points for adoption versus what Time has mentioned. I think in general, my take is we have to encourage or try to tilt the community towards building something which end user doesn't know the blockchain is behind the scene. So I think this obviously the goals, like for example, the projects that I engage with or the people that I talk to, I usually support or try to encourage them to that particular perspective. It's not, you don't have to let the user to build a Cardano transaction. That's the basics, I would say. There's still a lot of project right now is that SDK, you have to actually letting the clients to build a transaction on their own and submit to the blockchain, and then seeing a, like very rough error message about why it doesn't go through. It doesn't really help with the adoption. So on the UX perspective, my take is like doing something that abstract away the Cardano complexity for the users. Because so far I talked to the users is that there's actually not so many people care about which blockchain they're using. They're just caring about whether their problem is solved and what is the experience and so forth. So this is the second point. Third point is about tooling. I'm a big advocate of spending a little bit more into the open source, that kind of libraries perspective. To put a little bit of the figures, so far for Catalyst or anything, we have maybe 100 or 200 million ADA spent. So far, I observed to support the currently still existing large open source libraries, there's just 2 or 3 million out of the entire budget. I think it's all very, very underfunded. So that's a perspective. So far, we can see a few libraries in the community that's still standing, but that's, I would say, it's kind of a luck in the sense that the founders or the team know how to sell to the community, so that we could get the bare minimal, like the 2-3 millions that's actually supporting those libraries. But a lot of developers, they're just nuts. They don't know how to talk to people, how to say, hey, I need funding for doing this thing. More or less, just like Barry in the early days, Lucid is just, lack of funding, I'm not doing it anyway. Those kind of feeling. I think it's a mistake of the community to let Barry go. Actually, he built one of the best SDK in Cardano so far. So this is a third point that I try to say is just support the not rocket science SDK a little bit more as a community. The fourth point is about the scaling. It's very simple, just ship it. For whatever layer 2, just ship it. Right now we are still in the hype cycle. For example, we built on top of Hydra, but Hydra is still in pre-release. We are also trying our very best to talk to IOG to just ship it, and you don't need any crazy features. You ship it and then people will find out about it, and then we will build some cool things about it, because the opportunity sets kind of expand if you have the layer 2 scaling solution out there. So these are my points.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah. I guess my thoughts for currently how to help Cardano become more sustainable in the current climate. I think I would say free, but of course it takes time. I think something everyone can implement currently with all of their products is to do user testing. And user testing, I would say, relatively is a little low budget compared to maybe launching a whole product or all of these things. And the reason why I believe so strongly in user testing is you want to understand how, like, the frequency of the users and how often are they coming back to your product. Are they coming back to your product because you put out an advertisement? Are they coming back to your product right before an epoch, right after an epoch? And if so, why? What activities are they participating in with your specific product? How often are they coming by? What are they clicking on? What are they not using? Especially because there might be a development in aspects of, say a staking protocol that you're not even realizing that your user's not using because you don't even have that data. You don't have that like heat map of what the users are clicking on. So I think initially this is just something that can really bring clarity to current projects, no matter the level. It can be, very minor, or it could be a very complex product that might have thousands of users. But even having 10 users data on them will bring, I would say, 10 times more clarity on how to progress forward with that product.
Yeah, wow. You all have made very valid points, each and every one of you. Absolutely. Of course, this is just, a roundtable talk. We sit here in an hour, maybe just over an hour, to discuss these things with, multiple people here, multiple experts, I call you guys. But ultimately, I do believe that this discussion should not only remain here, but this should be stuff that really has to be discussed, broader within the ecosystem, because only then, we can really come to let's say, find answers and solutions and ideas. Exactly. So happy to kick this off, but please, wherever you go, if you're listening to this roundtable talk, please, bring this up in the ecosystem where you are, because making Cardano economically sustainable, that it affects everyone today and in the long term.
I can take the opportunity for this one, a little bit of self-promotion on this, not self-promotion on mine, but Denisio. We work in the community team at the foundation, and we came up with this roundtable format. And what you see here right now is one such roundtable. There should be many more. And the goal here is that even if we run it on the foundation, but we try to stay in the background, it should really be about ecosystem players and members. And what is a roundtable? A roundtable is not like an interview with just one project or one founder. It's a topic on a table. Okay, now we have here cakes on the table, but the topic is on the title of this
Cardano
recording.
is quite literally on the table.
Yep, right, correct, yeah. And then a group of people with a diverse input or perspective on this topic discuss it in front of an audience that is watching and listening it. In order to support or allow this group of this audience to form their own opinion. So like believe more the time or to him or to me, or see, okay, I understood something from here and here, now I have a better understanding. So the goal is this, and so this is also an offer to the ecosystem. Whenever there is a topic or you want to discuss, reach out to Denisio or to me or someone in the Cardano Foundation community team. We are very happy to give you an audience and visibility to discuss a topic.
Absolutely. So it's again, thank you all for joining. Marcus, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure having you here. Time, it's amazing having you here as well. Beautiful minds. Hinson, thank you so much. And until next time.
Okay.
Cool. Bye, everyone. Amazing. Guys, you are all amazing.